Oh, thank you. Hello, thank you. We are now returned from executive session, and we will go to approval of items by consensus with Superintendent Benton.
Good evening, everyone. We have approval of the minutes of September 26th regular session and warrants for payroll, SPED, grants, and local. I separated them out so that different members could do it.
Right, okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of September 26th school committee meeting.
I make a
Burns.
motion to approve the minutes of the September 26, 2012 regular session meeting.
Okay, do we have a second? Mrs. Bonish? Good. All those in favor? Unanimous, Linda. Oh, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 in favor, Linda. All those abstained? Dr. Quick will abstain. She was not here. And no, okay. I would entertain a motion to approve warrant for payroll for 9/26/12. Mrs. Bonish.
I make a motion to approve the warrant for payroll of 9/26/12.
Second, Mr. Mullis. All those in favor? 5, Linda, 1 abstain, Mrs. Kane. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve warrants SPED 2 and CB 2. Mr. Mullis.
Move to approve warrants SPED 2 and CB 2.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Dr. Quick? All those in favor? And all those abstain? 1. So 5 in favor, 1 abstain. Mrs. Burns. Thank you. And I'd entertain, we'll put the 2 together at the bottom, a motion to approve warrants G403, 404, R205, R206, L05, L06, L07, and L08. Mr. Hayes.
I make a motion.
Do we have a second? Mrs. Bonish? Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous, Linda. Good, thank you. Our next tonight will be the superintendent's report.
We have 3 items in the superintendent's report. There's a personnel report. We had a couple of resignation and non-renewal late in the resignation was late in the summer, and we finally have replacements. And we have some internal transfers and a new hire. This had to do with ed assistants.
Okay, thank you.
Pleased to announce the National Merit Scholarship Program. 4 of our students have been named commended students in the 2013 National Merit Scholarship Program. Peter Ammon, Michelle Barnes, John Campbell, and Joanna Torres. We congratulate them. There are about 34,000 commended students throughout the nation that are being recognized for their exceptional academic performance. So you will be hearing those names throughout the afternoon.
Excellent. Thank you. Congratulations to them all.
And this evening, Assistant Superintendent Burnham has a PowerPoint presentation on our beloved MCAS. And before she does that, I just would like to announce that the state DESE reviewed our appeal of the high school being a level 2 school because of 2 students who had medical issues, and we won the appeal. So they will be getting a written notice out to us at the high school, which I knew all along. So I'm very happy that we won that appeal. So I could recognize Assistant Superintendent Burnham, and the 3 of us have to move.
Okay, thank you. Do we need the light off? Or can we all right? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'll go through a quick summary and pull out some of the important features that are in the report that you have in your packets. To highlight overall performance data, as you can see, we have many grades in all 3 tests, ELA, math, and science, all secondary level. You'll see are performing with a high percentage rate of students scoring proficient or higher. All grades are scoring at least 50% proficient and higher, with the exception of the 8th grade science, technology, and engineering test. This is a quick highlight of the number of students at each grade level in each test that are in the warning or failing category. Obviously, we want to try to reduce these numbers. That's always a goal. And you can see that there are some areas that we have definite focus. For instance, grades 7 and 8 math, and the 8th grade science, technology, and engineering, which we've already seen was an area of focus from the previous slide. In your packets, you have a summary of the data by grade level, but here on the slide I've broken out the grades by school, just for a side-by-side comparison. When you take a look at the Shawshene and the Woburn Street grade 3, you can see that the Woburn Street had a slightly stronger performance in both ELA and math as compared to the Shawshene. But I would like to indicate that the percentages are good for both schools. We had a strong performance in both, showing higher achievement at both buildings for both tests. Again, side by side, the north and the west, grade 4. You can see that both schools really had a very comparable performance, matching pretty closely each category: proficient, advanced, needs improvement, and warning, for both the ELA and the math test. And the same is true at grade 5. Very comparable performance in all 3 tests: the ELA, math, and science. Last year when we did the MCAS report, I shared with you a graphic image of the combined performance and growth data. At the state level, they use a graphical representation that has 4 quadrants. Ideally, we would like to see all of our results up in that blue zone. This year, the state put out some reports, and they've created this middle zone that you can see there in the yellow and the orange. That's that moderate growth range, so anywhere between 40% to 59%. We'll take a look by grade. You can see that we're doing pretty well. Both math and ELA, we see grades 3 through 8 and 10 for ELA, grades 5, 6, 8, and 10 for math would be in that yellow zone, which is good. We're on the upside of the 50% proficient advanced, so 50% of the students performing at proficient or advanced. That's where we want to be, above that line that goes horizontal across that graph. Same is true for our math performance, up in that yellow zone. Nice to see that grades 4 and 7 in the math test, however, are in the blue zone, which is great news. Taking a look again at the data by school, all schools are showing a moderate growth with a high achievement, so we're in that yellow zone again, with the exception of the North Intermediate, which we saw some high growth and high achievement in that blue zone. When we take a look at the groups, and last meeting, Jen Jenkins, the data coordinator for the district, shared with you the PPI data. The subgroups that we used to be reporting were the low income and our special ed students as subgroups. Now we're talking about the high needs, which encompasses, again, the low income, the ELL students, and special ed students. And you can see here that's where we have an area to focus. Our high needs data test. There are some students who who take the MCAS alternative assessment, the MCAS Alt as it's called. There were 28 students who participated in the MCAS Alt this year. They are not all in district. Some of them are placed out of district. And you can see here that for the most part, there are several categories. They're different from the traditional MCAS, needs improvement, advanced, those sorts of things. So we have several categories here, and in a moment I'll flip to a slide so that we can go over the categories. But you can see that the high numbers there, the 19, the 22, and really even over in the STE, the 2, those are progressing. That's the category, and that's where we find most of our students performing in that category. So I'll take a close look. So one of the categories is incomplete. The portfolio was not complete. We did have some students at the level of the awareness category, but you can see here in the green, the emerging category, and then progressing where most of our students fall. But the target really is to get to that needs improvement category or beyond, proficient and advanced. If a student performs in that needs improvement category, that's the equivalent of passing the MCAS test. So many of our students are falling just below that.
Say that again?
Overall, when we take a look at the data, Wilmington as a district is performing at or above the state average. Our non-high needs group, as in most districts, outperforms the high needs group. So it's an area that we can look at. Overall, when you take a look, all grades across the 3 different tests, the ELA, the math, and the science, our students have their best performance at all grades in the ELA test, and the weakest performance, all grades, is in the science test. Additionally, when we take a closer look at the data, we're seeing that across grade levels, students could make some improvement in the open response type questions. So that's an area that we can target, with the exception of grades 4, 6, 7, and 10 in math. They handled the open response questions a little bit better. Again, same is true for the grade 10 biology. When we take a look at the performance by standards, some trends start to pop out across grade levels. For instance, in the math test, the geometry standard and any of the standards related to fractions, those are the areas that we see some potential for a target for improvement. In the ELA test, the standards of text type and purpose and key ideas and details are 2 areas that we can focus on. And when we take a look at the different science tests, even at the high school there were several different versions of a science test. There's no clear pattern. It's kind of scattered across the standards. So moving forward, we're going to continue to look at the data. As Jen Jenkins indicated to you last week, our last meeting, giving the report on the PPI data, we have data teams in place at every building. We also have vertical teams in place. We have grade level teams. All groups are going to be taking a look at the data throughout the year, not just the MCAS data, but other data that we generate in district as well. There are structures in place that will facilitate teacher access to the data. Having Jen on board to get those reports for teachers is one way. Aspen is another way. That's our data management system. We are uploading the MCAS results into Aspen so that teachers will have access to that data. And we're also going to take a look at a focus for PD this year in both writing and math pedagogy. And for parents who would like to have more information on the student growth percentile, there is a link on the website that gives more information in the tutorial video and that sort of thing. So it's fairly helpful. questions?
I do have a question.
Do you have? Okay, Donna. Mrs. Burns.
Just, I'm hoping that you might clarify and shed some light. Those students who are taking the MCAS alt within our district, what measures because that's such an alternative way of taking it, what measures do you, or I don't know if the Department of Special Ed, do in order to target that area for improvement? Do you meet and discuss other, I mean, it's such a specialized kind of area. Do you do something specific? Do you working with the department to get the curriculum to where the children are learning, modified it,
The department offers trainings that our special ed teachers do attend.
Okay. Is that state?
For development of the portfolios.
Okay.
And I will mention as an aside that the scoring of these portfolios, it does factor into the calculation of the PPI for both the school and the district.
Okay, so that's included in the number, okay. Thank you.
And in district, we have made adjustments to the curricula. We had purchased a new mathematics curriculum for the elementary and middle school level for students on educational plans who need less words and more symbols, easy kids who get can get swallowed up in the print, and that's been Saxon Math was purchased this year, and for the English language arts. And one of the things that the coordinator program review actually commended us on is Mary Hood and her team once a month review, so, pick files out and look at the data around the student progress.
Mm-hmm.
The new AIMS program we have at the elementary level gives instant feedback to all teachers, whether regular ed or special ed, on progress made, which is really going to be helpful for these teachers.
Does that that information then go back to the teachers for those high needs groups that are struggling to kind of revamp? Is that how that's done?
Yes. Jason Fredette and Lisa King have been, for the past 4 years, working on creating what's now called MTSS. Used to be Response to Intervention, now it's Massachusetts
Tiered system of support.
Tiered System of Support for all students. So we are now having regular ed and special ed teachers looking at data on all students incrementally so that we can adapt changes so we can fit the needs of each student, so that we can measure progress. Jason and Lisa did a presentation last night at the WEF Foundation, and I'm actually going to have them come in and do a presentation for the school committee, because they did a really wonderful job. But yes, we're constantly doing it. The problem, though, with the alternative portfolios, it's very, very time-consuming, and in some ways tedious for the students. I mean, what the state makes these kids go through, in my opinion, as far as the requirements.
It's over the course of the year, is that how?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But all of our teachers are trained every year on ALS.
Okay. Thank you
And
very
I will
much.
say too that in that slide where I indicated that PD would be focusing on the writing and the math pedagogy, there's a combined effort really with Mary Hood and myself to find opportunities for PD where we bring together the special ed teachers with the content area teachers.
Oh, that's a great idea, actually.
To approach it that way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? I just have a couple of questions. Let me ask them, when you're talking about having the results of the students that are available for people, are you talking, how do we maintain the kids' confidentiality? Do we just have classroom sets with the names blocked out? How does that work?
The only teachers who have access to, the only students that they'd have access to are the students that they have assigned to them for the current year. They don't have access to all students.
Okay, so the student, so when you and Jen and the overview people are working through this, you're working on data that's not identifying students, specific students?
There are, well, yeah, unless they were looking for information on a particular student.
Right.
Most of the reports that are generated through the data warehouse are not student-specific.
Okay, because when we first started using the computers to do our grades, one of the biggest problems we had, this was well over 10 years ago, so I'm sure it's been rectified now, but once a third person was able to view those grades, it became public record. And so we had to be really careful that there wasn't a third or fourth or fifth person looking at specific students' names on there, so that's not an issue anymore.
No, it really
No,
shouldn't be.
in fact, the state's
report-
collecting
right.
every piece of information on every single student and teacher. The new evaluation scores are going to be going into EPIMS as well. So that's, the state is being transparent.
Yes.
And they're also
Ah.
supporting the use of data teams at the district level.
Okay, and the other thing I was wondering on, I'm not sure if you know this, because it must be happening at the high school, the STEM area where you could take the kids can take 4 tests, 1 of 4, they get to, can you explain how that works?
Sure.
Yeah.
The students do have the option to take one of the 4. They have to pass one of the 4. And for science, the passing score is not the 240, but it's 220.
So biology.
So biology is one test, chemistry is another one, intro to physics is another one, and the science, the technology and engineering at the high school level is another one.
Okay.
Typically, our students are taking the introductory physics test at grade 9, and then there are some students, if they don't pass that test as 9th graders, they're taking biology as 10th graders. They would likely opt to take the biology test while they're taking the biology course or coming to the conclusion of the biology course, rather than opting to retake the intro to physics that they completed a year ago.
That makes sense, but how physically does that work? In March, do they tell you what they're doing and then you set up
Yes,
the testing?
yes. The orders
That's
have to be
a lot.
placed in March. As a matter of fact, right during the window when the MCAS is being administered, the ELA test, materials need to be ordered, so we do need to identify which students will be testing and which tests they will be taking, so that we can order the appropriate number of tests.
Boy, that's a lot of work, too.
Yes, it is.
Yes. But that's another thing too. I never understood why kids who were taking SAT in biology waited for 2 years after they had biology to take the test. And it's really, you have to encourage them to take it right away while they still know it.
And the state has designed these tests to be what they call end-of-course
Oh,
assessments.
good, okay. And I thought I saw previously that we did very well in the last one that you mentioned, the technology science, that our students did well in that area.
In biology, 10th grade biology, they had a particularly strong performance. But again, that's a smaller group of students that are taking that test, because the majority of students are taking the introductory physics test in their 9th grade year. And once a student hits that 220 mark, that's it. They don't get to test again to see if they can get a better score on a different test. Once they hit that, what they call the competency determination score, that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any? Mrs.
Well,
Bonish?
just comes with this conversation. Why are the 9th graders taking physics? Why would they choose that?
Well, a good number of years ago now, probably 7 or 8 years ago, there was a move at the state level away from an integrated science test at the high school level, which would have included questions related to biology concepts, chemistry concepts, physics concepts, to these end-of-course assessments.
But they don't.
And at the same time, there was a movement afoot to move physics to the 9th grade, because they felt that not enough students took physics when it was a senior year elective. So many districts put it in as a 9th grade program. There are some districts that put in biology as a 9th grade program, but many districts went to the physics as a 9th grade program.
Did Wilmington do that? Oh, I didn't even know that.
I didn't know that, yeah.
Is that
We'd like to
new?
change it. We would.
Yeah.
Change it from,
What it is now, the physics, introduction to physics in freshman year.
when did that happen?
It was probably about 7 or 8
Yeah.
years ago.
But it would seem they wouldn't have the math, the corresponding math knowledge.
It's more of a, I'm not going to say there's no math, because there is plenty of math, but it's more of a conceptual curriculum rather than a heavy focus on math involving trigonometry, calculus, that sort of thing. So it's not the same sort of physics course that you might see at, a senior level course, particularly if it were an honors course in physics. It's a different course.
Mr. Hayes?
Just to speak to Mrs. Bonish's point, I took biology my freshman year here, so it's sort of interesting. I didn't take chemistry until grade 11, but I sort of understand what you're saying as well. My question, and I wasn't going to ask this, but then it sort of perked up in my mind. At last week's Technology Task Force meeting, you had said that in the near future, MCAS or whatever replaces it, the students are going to be tested. The test is going to be computerized.
Mm-hmm.
Kids will be using it. I was wondering if you had a timeline on that. Did you get any information after the meeting, or?
No, we don't have a timeline on it. The assumption that we're moving with is that the park assessment is going to be designed to be an online assessment. Now, whether they're going to stick to the schedule or not, I can't say, but the park assessment is due to be implemented next spring, a year from this spring,
Right.
for grades 3 through 8.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, thanks for the information. That's definitely something I'm going to monitor on my end. But thank you.
I had a question too from somebody else, and I didn't know the answer to this. Students who leave us and then get their GED, do they have to take MCAS? And if they do, does it count in with the Wilmington MCAS scores?
That's a really good question.
Isn't that interesting?
I'm not sure that if they got a GED, I don't think they'd have to take it. And it doesn't factor into our scores, because our PPI data is built on that grade 10 assessment.
Right, okay.
It's not with the retests that students who don't hit that 240 mark would retest as juniors until they reach that 240 threshold. Those students and their scores are not factored into our PPI data. I'm not sure that students...
If they left, they would not be included in,
right.
because it all, excuse me, it's all, and that's how we got in trouble with the level 2 high school thing. It's all based on the student information in the system.
Mhm.
So if a student left to get a GED, that student would be a
No
withdrawal.
longer in the system, right, that's what I thought. Thank you. Do we have any other? I will say this fabulous report. Thank you so much. Colors and the graphs and that. I think all the ways that we learned, I think we all had a touch of it. It was excellent. Thank you, Ms. Burnham, really. Okay, our next item, there is no old business, so new business, our budget development schedule.
So Mr. Adjaro's put together a schedule for the FY14 budget prep, and we're proposing to do the presentation to the school committee on December 12th, starting at 6:30. That's when all the principals are here instead of doing the Saturday meeting. I think last year we all agreed that worked out better than the Saturday morning. Just, is there any
Any
concerns?
issues with that?
Okay,
Sounds good.
thank you.
Actually, if it's lengthy too, that'll be basically the whole meeting.
Right, that'll be the only thing on the agenda.
That'll be the only thing on the
yes.
agenda, okay. Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, our next item is the MASC resolutions.
So there's five
Yeah.
resolutions. Most of them have to do with funding unmandated mandates.
Okay. I think what we can do is just read the resolution, and then if anyone has any comments on it, they're pretty, they kind of speak for themselves. And we thank Mrs. Burns for volunteering to be our delegate. And and we want you to know that if something comes up during the meeting that changes your mind about how we should vote, you have the freedom to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Resolution 1, establishment of a special commission of the legislature for the study of mandated reports and data submissions for school districts, which was submitted by the Framingham School Committee. Does anyone have any comments on this one?
I recommend that you vote in favor of this, based on the duplication of work we have to do all the time.
Yes, I think that's excellent. It's, they're saying that it's overly burdensome on school administration, detracts from the role of administrators as supervisors, and this is the key, has never been analyzed to examine their benefit in increasing student achievement. So, do we have any?
Did you want to vote them all at once, or did you want to?
No, let's just do one at a time, I think it'd be easier.
I agree.
Mr. Hayes?
Yep, so I'll make a motion that we support Resolution 1.
Okay, do we have a second? Mrs. Burns? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. That's a yes. Resolution 2, modification of the circuit breaker formula, also from Framingham School Committee. Whereas the spiraling cost of special education are significantly and adversely affecting school budgets across the Commonwealth, they would like to modify so that the legislature would assist school districts by helping to fund more of the cost burden of educating students in out-of-district placements.
And this would be
Mrs.
for,
Benton.
this would be for out-of-district placement costs, which are $125,000 or more. We're asking the state to reimburse at 75%.
Yes.
Definitely recommend yes on that.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Ms. Burns?
I make a motion to
That's good.
support the Resolution 2, modification of the circuit breaker formula.
All right. Okay, do we have a second? Mr. Mullis? All right, all those in favor? Unanimous, yes. Thank you. Resolution 3 is some health insurance coverage for medically necessary treatment in school, submitted by the Brookline School Committee. Whereas Massachusetts health insurance cover physical and mental health care expenses for all children with one exception. And whereas said one exception is the physical and mental health care expenses for children and young adults over 3 years of age and up to age 22 who have been identified with special education needs. Currently, Commonwealth school districts are required to pay for such health care expenses. This came up years ago. This has been coming up for years. And down the bottom of this, it says, meeting the educational needs of every child is the obligation of all school districts. Meeting the health care needs of every child is the obligation of the Commonwealth public and private health care system. That's the basis of this. Mrs. Benton?
Well, I recommend voting in favor of this. This is for costs like nurses that we have to hire for students. What this is saying is the insurance company should be paying for it, not the public schools.
Yes, exactly. Mrs. Burns?
I do have a concern, because I actually called Mike Gilbert today to speak to him on this, because I just want to clarify that I'm interpreting it accurately. It's going to cover all services with children that receive PT, OT, billing for those services, and he actually was able to clarify. I actually think this is a viable resolution, but my only concern is insurances are so different nowadays, and I understand that Mr. Gilbert did say that anything not picked up by the insurance would be district responsibility, but my only concern is some insurances work on benefit limits. So if the school uses, and I'm not quite, and this is where my concern is, I don't have an answer, but if the school uses those benefits and they meet their benefit for the year, and let's say a family has outside therapy that supports what's going on in the school, where does that leave that family if their benefits are exhausted? And that's something that he really couldn't address because it wouldn't be a district responsibility because it is an outside service. So that's where my reservation, I think it's, like I said, overall, I think it's a great resolution, but my concern is the impact on certain families, and not every child has a secondary insurance that picks up what primary doesn't. So that's what I want to throw out there.
Dr. Quick?
Basically, the exact same thing I was gonna say, what you were saying, Mrs. Burns, is with the way the health insurances are right now, I think that will be an area of friction if this does pass, only because of, it's not black and white, there's a lot of gray. So I think if this did pass, I think it's a wonderful, trust me, I think it's a great thing to have. My concern would be what happens afterwards, and that might be a lot of work in the beginning. So that's my concern, and I'm basically just kind of reiterating what MJ said.
Well, I think the insurance companies will have to come up with a solution to that. I mean, what this bill is trying to do is cut down on $350,000 expenses that we pay on one student each year that insurance companies really should be paying part of. Now, it's an interesting question about limits, and I'm not sure, like my insurance policy would cover for an aide or any of the things that this is going to cover for. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. I don't see how it could, I'd lose my personal benefits for a school. So I agree with both of you that they're going to have to make some other changes on the block.
And I'm thinking that right now, we pay for it all. If they would pay for part of it, no matter how much part we pay for, if we could get the state to pay for the other, it's worth taking the chance that they'll need to work something out.
And that's my only concern, that is addressed with families who have caps on their benefits of those special services. So,
Yeah, I know, yeah.
But the last sentence says the proposed legislation will require healthcare systems to cover medically necessary expenses without exception.
Well,
that's
the way insurance companies are nowadays, I don't...
No, I guess so. I'm asking you because you're going to be down there to raise it.
Yeah, okay.
Watch out for amendments on this one, too. I think there'll be...
There'll be a lot of discussion, yeah. So how does the board feel at this present time? Unresolved until...
Do we have a motion? Yes or no? What do we think?
Leslie has a hand up.
Oh, Leslie, sorry.
Well, I move to vote in the affirmative for Resolution 3.
Do we have a second? Manny? Okay, all those in favor of the affirmative vote? Okay, unanimous. Then that gives you leeway to see what happens. When Brookline brings up things, usually they bring their own discussion with them. They're really interesting, they're excellent, they are, well prepared, they seem to have both sides.
Is this
Would you say,
something where
Robert?
I would agree.
other committees can also speak to? And
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Oh,
So then I'll raise that at the time then.
Yep. Okay, resolution 4. Did you want to say something about that?
I was just going to make a joke. Brookline will meet you in the lobby and try to get your vote.
Oh. Very good. Resolution 4, funding for educator evaluation system, submitted by MASC Board of Directors. And what they're basically saying is a race to the top money does not give adequate compensation for districts for the time and expense that's going to be required for this, and they believe that the state should give money towards it. Okay. And we all, from the small talk that we had with Mike Gilbert, we all realize we're looking here at what are those principals going to be doing when you think about how many people they'll have assigned to them. It's incredible.
I recommend favorable action on this.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion? Manny? Mr. Moulis.
I make a motion to have a favorable vote for Resolution 5, adequacy study.
Okay, do we have a second? Mrs. Bonish? Were you, oh, yeah.
That's 4.
Sorry.
4.
We're doing,
I'm sorry. Votes have a, vote yes on Resolution 4, funding for educator evaluation system.
okay. Mrs. Bonish. Second. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, unanimous, yes. And Resolution 5, adequacy study. This is also the MASC Board of Directors. This is an interesting one.
It's basically asking them to do a new formula for Chapter 70 funding.
Yeah, oh, okay, that's a good one.
Now, if you recall how long it took to get the first formula, it's going to take, this is always a good thing.
Okay,
I would recommend favorable action on this.
all right, very good. Do we have a motion about this one? Dr. Quick?
Motion to approve, vote, affirm Resolution 5 adequacy study.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, Mrs. Bonish. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. This is interesting. We had all positives on this.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, I think it was. All right, public comments? We have no public tonight, so no public comments. Other reports, we have a few reports tonight. So first, we'll start with Dr. Quick.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with, this past month, I've been to the School Health Advisory Council and Wellness Committee, and I'll begin with that. Just a few topics that I wanted to touch upon that were discussed during that time. The Essential School Health Services Grant, 2012-2013 goals, we had a $77,900 award, and Doreen Crow's in charge of that, our head nurse, and she discussed how they're mentoring Burlington, or they mentored or mentoring, I'm not really sure, Burlington and Woburn because of the work that we've done in Wilmington, so that's very exciting. A couple other things. They're having a school wellness logo contest, and we're going to target the middle school students. So the middle school is going to be having a logo contest, so we'll see how that comes out, and I'll keep you updated on that. WCTV in the Loop in September featured coordinated school health program. And I didn't get to see it, but I heard it was very good. And then some upcoming program that will be going on in the Loop is Bring Your Own Electronic Device, concussions, which is obviously a big topic, and then the new federal food changes, which is really exciting. Mary Palin gave us some updates on some of those changes that we saw at that meeting, was it last month, I believe? So she just gave us more information about that. And I guess kids are in uproar protesting changes to the new National Lunch Program. So that'll be interesting to see what happens, because so many of the changes that are occurring that are making it very difficult on the part of food services, and the kids just are not, I guess, enjoying their lunches as much anymore, because everything's all about, proper, everything's going, they're getting very particular. In some ways it's good, but it's harder for the school lunches. And last week they shucked corn at the North and the West. The 4th graders did that, and that's always, my daughter came home and she's like, we shucked our corn. She was all excited about that, so that's always exciting for them to do. School-based flu clinic will be held October 17th from 2:30 to 4:30 at the middle school, free of charge by appointment. There's also a townwide flu clinic on October 20th, 9 to 12 noon at the town hall. Last, one of the things that they were talking about, some goals, Wilmington Healthy Activity Movement, the Rotary mini grant of $1,500 plus a possible matching grant of $1,500. Ms. Stinson was discussing this. They're going to be doing take-home physical education bags for the students to take home. One of the things I had brought up during the meeting was it's well and good to be giving the kids these take-home bags, but we want to make sure they're using them. So I was hoping that maybe they would add some sort of accountability of, with the younger grade levels, they have a reading log, maybe something where they have an activity log. So if they get a jump rope, maybe they're doing, 5 minutes of jump rope, and they maybe have their parents sign. I don't know. We'll see what goes on with that, but that's going to be really exciting. They'll be piloting that at the Woburn Street School in the 3rd grade this year. And that's it for the School Health and Wellness Committee. And then on to the Wilmington Education Foundation. Last night we had it's our favorite meeting of the year, because we have the grant recipients come to the meeting and they present how they use their awards, basically. And so last night we had our curriculum grant recipients present, and Mr. Fredette and Lisa King were one of the presenters. They presented on what we were discussing before, the NMTSS. Okay. So we had the curriculum grant recipients present, and we also had the educator exploration grant recipients present. And it's a wonderful time to
to watch kind of where the funding goes, because they presented on how they used the grant and how they brought it back to the students, either via the curriculum, for the curriculum grants, or in educators' explorations, for example. Lois Nardo, for example, she did a yoga training. She received grant money for the summer to do yoga training, and I'm forgetting her name, but Krista Anderson was at Disneyland in California at a business training. And she's also the head of DECA. So she was basically there learning about how service can help business. So it was great to just see them how they're going to bring it back to their students. So it was a very exciting night. So we love that meeting. Second of all, the Walk for WEF, October 31st at all the schools through middle school. Look for that, and then obviously all the donation forms went home, and it's always an exciting time for the kids because they get to wear their costumes and walk around, and it promotes physical education, which is also good. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about, we lost 3 really wonderful members on our board last year. So we're just looking to grow the board. So if you or anybody knows anybody who would like to become a part of the WEF, we're always looking for new and wonderful, fresh people to help us with our fundraising efforts. And that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Great, that's excellent, thank you. Mr. Hayes and Mrs. Bonish, Technology?
Sure. Thank you, Chairwoman Kane. So last week, Mrs. Bonish and I attended the Technology Task Force meeting run by Director Neil Ellis. Before I get into it, though, I'm going to forget if I don't. I watch On the Loop every month, Mrs. Burnham, and I particularly enjoyed the latest episode with the Bring Your Own Technology and teachers using social media and QR codes. I mean, I think this is just the way of the future, so that's wonderful. Okay, so in related news, though, so things that were discussed at the meeting, Aspen, which was discussed, or at least mentioned earlier at tonight's meeting, the family portal is being piloted. There are over 30 teachers from grades 6 through 12 that are going to be using it with their students and their parents. There's a lot of training opportunities surrounding this Aspen. Let's see, they're going to discuss it more at the kickoff teacher meeting on October 11th. The gradebook training, as of now, has been very successful. And sort of the long-term goal is by next year, everyone will be using it. Also, let's see, projectors. So Mr. Ellis and his, I think he has 4 technicians, they put in approximately 50 projectors at the elementary level, grades 1 through 5. Pretty much every classroom has a projector, or every classroom teacher, so I guess they prioritized classroom teachers versus specialists, which I think makes sense. He's trying out new projectors and lots of professional development surrounding projectors and Mimios. Wireless was installed over the summer at the middle school. There was some initial problems with it, and Neil is still tweaking it, and he hopes it will be at 100% soon. Middle school laptops, the 3 carts worth of laptops have been purchased. They're forming a committee to figure out how best to use them, and this will go a long way, and this will sort of help the experiment towards the pushing the middle school to a BYOD initiative, Bring Your Own Device initiative. Let me see, technical vertical team, there was a little bit of a changeover in the staff at the beginning of the year. That's staff participating at the beginning of the year, that's normal. They have monthly meetings. Their first meeting was last Thursday. There was actually a Mimeo user group meeting over the summer that was very successful, and they're actually using the Mimeo to create lessons around the Common Core curriculum. The technology training workshops are very popular. Fall offerings include Edmodo, projector-friendly classroom, Mimeo Advanced, and online tools for tiered instruction. Great response to all the online classes especially. They have one called Professional Development in Your PJs. I like that. PD in your PJs, right? And let's see. And then also I was trying to get a sense of how our budget and how our staffing level with the technology budget compares with other school districts, comparable school districts. And there wasn't really a clear answer, but one thing sort of anecdotal was that several of the educators in the room were saying how, here in Wilmington, when there's some sort of, problem with equipment or whatnot, and they call the technicians, there's generally, a 2 or 3 day turnaround, where in a lot of other districts, they don't have the staffing to do that. And so projectors and Mimios and whatnot stay broken for a lot longer. So that was certainly positive to hear. And then the only last thing I'll bring up is that just something to keep an eye on as we plan next year's budget. Neil was in no way complaining, but Mr. Ellis mentioned how his computer replacement line item had been zeroed out for this fiscal year, and I think part of that was because sort of to offset some of the wireless at the middle school. But I know that in FY12 we gave him $85,000 for computer lease and purchases, and for FY13 we gave him $0. We did this year though increase the instructional technology line by about 30%, and we essentially level funded all the classroom technology equipment lines at each of the 8 schools. So I mean, it's not like we're we're doing fine. But I would just note that, and the reason I bring this up is because 2 of the assistant principals mentioned that at least one of the schools, if not 2, there are computer labs that have computers dating back to 2004. So Neil would prefer to have a 5-year replacement cycle, and that's something that we haven't really been able to afford. And I know we're looking at even tougher times potentially ahead, and then of course we're going to a 1-to-1 eventually too. So how much do you want to invest in computers? But something I bring up just for future discussion. Okay, and I'll end there before I explode. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Do we have any that I didn't get? Anybody? Excuse me. I do have you here. Ms. Burns, CPAC.
Thank you, Chairwoman Katie. Christine DeAmbrose and Katie O'Malley, who are both board members of the Wilmington Special Education Parents Advisory Council, along with other CPACs from the Merrimack Valley, hosted a special education resource fair last Saturday at Merrimack College, where they had 52 vendors, mostly from the Merrimack area, ranging from medical and therapeutic services to therapeutic writing academies, to financial planning, and people would go through and pick up information. Approximately 175 to 200 people came to the event, and they received a lot of positive feedback from that event. So it was a huge success, and I'm hoping next year they can do it again, hopefully with more vendors that are publicized. So for the first resource fair, which is a huge undertaking, it went quite well. And I just wanted to note down too that tomorrow is their first board meeting of the season. They're starting at 6:30 with a meet and greet the CPAC, and then they will start their board meeting at 7:30 for anyone who's interested. And the first workshop is scheduled for October 25th, which is a basic rights workshop, which basically goes over special education law, IDEA, process of IEPs, evaluations, team meetings. It just touches on that. That too will take place at 7 o'clock, and both are here at the Wilmington High School Library. And they're also for the workshop on the 25th, they are piloting a babysitting program. So if anybody's interested and can't afford it babysitting, bring it along, but they do need to register with Martha O'Brien, and there's a variety of ways of contacting her, either by her cell phone at 978-621-4612, or you can email her at fjo316@gmail.com, which he said it was okay to give out. So, but you must register in order to utilize that service at the workshop. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. While we're on that, I'm going to have us look for 1 minute at our subcommittee assignments, because we're going to make a switch in that, and as we go down, I wanted to see if people over the next couple of weeks will just check with we have a number of people on subcommittees that are not operating or haven't started this year, or would just check and make sure those subcommittees are going to be happening. For instance, maybe we had it and I didn't know yet, the anti-bullying committee. We have to work on the school committee executive session notes, which is quarterly, so we'll do that. And our legislative subcommittee we have. We'll take off the negotiations for secretary, because that subcommittee that's been settled, so we can take that from here. And then I'm going to replace Mrs. Burns on the CPAC subcommittee. So school committee representative to CPAC, that would be me. And is everybody else so far, we seem fine with the subcommittees that we're on? Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
so
Ms.
am I
Briscoe.
going to just do the anti-bullying subcommittee?
For now, if that's okay, yeah. Because I think we really don't, we're kind of down on subcommittees here, which is good, in a way. Do we have any others that we think? I know what I just wanted to ask you on this one, the strategic plan.
We're going to be starting up at the end of October. So
Oh,
we'll be
okay.
back.
Mr. Mullis, if you think about this on the strategic plan, because with your schedule, we'll see if
Okay.
Mrs. Benton could let you know how often that might be or something.
Yeah, if I can know in advance, because
Okay.
for the next couple of months, my schedule,
Because if you
we're
don't
going to be traveling a
mind,
lot.
we could replace you at that point with somebody
We
who,
could Skype you.
or
Do that too.
or Skype you, we could learn about,
We could
that
do
would
that
be great,
too.
okay.
Yeah, we can talk offline on that.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. All right, I think that's it for those. Correspondence, Mrs. Bonish. No correspondence. Future meeting dates and agenda items, October 24th and November 7th, and actually,
Correct.
that's right,
It should be the 14th
yeah,
of November.
that's what I was gonna say.
Of November.
The second Wednesday is November 14th, so we thought at first it was gonna interrupt with 3 of us going to the conference, but it's not. So we'll be able to have a conference update when we get back on the 14th.
And the 24th, school improvement plans will be presented, as well as a new kindergarten report card.
Okay.
I just need to look, I will
Yes.
not, I'll be in Germany at the next school committee.
Oh, she had to say that. That's wonderful. We'll expect a report on Germany.
Sure.
Thank you.
Paul will get your packet to you in German.
That's great. All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Dr. Quick.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second. Mrs. Burns, great. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Have a good 2 weeks.